Hi, everybody. My name is Whitney Parker. Welcome to our panel discussion about social media and magazine brands. Are we just the nerds du jour or the next boss? I'm going to introduce myself very briefly and then also introduce my panelists here. As I said, I'm with Brazen Careerist. I'm the Vice President of User Experience. At Brazen Careerist, we believe everybody deserves the job they love. It's a career management company. It's based in Washington, D.C. and New York. And we help provide virtual recruiting events, online networking events, and skills-based professional development training. Most recently, I've been working on a social media strategy curriculum to help train social media strategists in a variety of industries. It's an all-online curriculum that takes about 4 weeks. In addition to that, I'm also director of social media for an 8,000-member nonprofit group called Young Professionals in Foreign Policy, based also in DC, New York, London, and Brussels. So briefly, let me introduce my panel here. We have Jason Snell, who is the Vice President and Editorial Director of Macworld. Next to Jason, we have Lauren Salazar, who's the Social Media Manager for Weight Watchers International. Here we have Michelle Edelbaum, who is the Digital Editor of Eating Well. And also we have Patricia Cesaire, who is Director of Marketing and Digital Strategy for Black Enterprise. So it's a pleasure to be serving with all of you on this great panel, and welcome. So to kick off our panel, I'd like to ask each of you to tell us a bit about where social media sits within your respective magazines, and about how your role in particular is part of the magazine. So Jason, maybe let's start with you.
Sure. So I'm the editorial director, so I have a group of about 16 editors who report to me. And social media for us as editors, because it's interaction with our audience, we sort of feel like everybody needs to be involved with social media. I'll probably say that a few times here today. So we actually have a system where our website is maintained in shifts across the work week. So everybody is responsible for 1 or 2 4-hour periods where they're the person in charge. They're seeing if there's breaking news and making sure it gets assigned. They're updating the featured items on our front door. And they are also responsible for social media interaction during that period. So, for a 4-hour period, you are the voice of our brand on Twitter or Facebook. Actually, both, right, simultaneously. So that's sort of how we've done it in our editorial group, is we've just tried to spread it out and have everybody be involved. Now, there are people who are more and less involved, but generally, everybody has to take a crack at it.
Great. Lauren, how about you?
Social media started out as a marketing initiative in our company. Really, the budget came from that, the direction, the strategy. It's since expanded into be a co-initiative between our content and our marketing department. And it's essentially our digital editors who are the content owners for social media. We work with the print editors as well to sort of develop what the digital strategy is for promoting their magazine content. But it really lives in our marketing and our digital content team.
Great. Michelle, how about you?
So my role is actually on the editorial team, and our Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and other social media contacts come from editors on our edit team. My role is to serve as a liaison between the edit team, our production team, our business team, our marketing team, and bring all those contacts together and work with the editors that are really on the ground doing the work to bring everybody together.
Okay, and Patricia?
The role of social media originated with Black Enterprise with marketing, but it's since expanded to editorial, and sales, as well as our television production teams. So it's no longer fashioned just around the marketers who have a clear understanding of how the conversation platform takes place within digital, and it's now expanded to folks across each department looking to have an active role. The strategy is still managed within marketing, and I work with each department on building not only their social media strategy, but their messaging strategy across digital now. So it was born in marketing and now has spread out, as you could imagine, across every department that looks to have a real presence across the social space.
Okay, that's great. I want to have you guys talk a little about the influence that the social media team has within your respective publications. Do you see them having a lot of influence over the direction of various projects within your company? And how exactly do you see them fitting in there in terms of a management structure? So we could start on this side first. Patricia, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Well, Black Enterprise is a multimedia company. As I mentioned earlier, there is 2 television shows. There's a vibrant print magazine publication, which is 40 years old at this point. There's a website that's newly relaunched, blackenterprise.com, a mobile site as well, and we have a pretty strong sales team as well. So there's of course, the revenue side, but those are several different vibrant portals that we have for encouraging folks around the principles of small business development and career development and personal finance and money management. Since then, we've looked to have social media become a very critical part of how folks connect with the brand on a daily basis, on an hourly basis even. It's also proven to be a great sounding board for sharing with editorial what folks are interested in. It's a great way to source trends, of course, and for our sales team, it's a great way to show how digital activation can build out in a measurable way with our audience for their clients.
Great. You want to continue?
At Eating Well, I think our digital and social teams are pretty important and definitely play a big role, not only in our content development, but also in our engagement strategies. So we take an integrative approach where we really look at what's happening online and what's happening in our social space, and that really fuels what's going to happen to our content in the magazine, online, in social, and the other extensions of what's going to happen. And so I think the data from that we are able to get from a social and digital aspect is really hugely influential in informing what we're going to continue to do, where our readers are, what they're responding to, what they're not responding to. So we take all of that pretty seriously, and that's a really big part of our content development process. And then also, of course, it's a huge way for us to connect with our readers and engage with them, and a place where advertisers and marketers can come in and be part of that as well.
Okay.
How influential is our team? I would say our first mandate was really to amplify essentially existing brand initiatives. What is the company, what are our different products already doing, and then what can you do in social to really bring an extra sense of awareness or engagement here. I think what we found doing that is we have more freedom. There isn't a blueprint, there isn't the institutional knowledge around this is how you do this. So we had more freedom to expand the direction that those initiatives go in subsequent years. So integrating UGC into a traditional marketing campaign that we wouldn't have had before, into commercials, into a different integration with another media property. We've never done those things, so we were influential in expanding the direction and where the company felt comfortable to go. I think there's also just the resources. As we're able to show the feedback and the product learnings that we can get from social, we're able to funnel resources into different channels, whether they're budgetary, whether they're people. That's really where the influence lies for our team.
Great. Jason, how about you?
It's interesting that Lauren mentioned having no blueprint. Our editors started all of our kind of interaction individually and through the brand, and only later did it become clear that this was going to be really important in a broader sense. And so the value that we've had in having a social media person in our audience development group has been to try and reconnect that to the rest of the company. The editors are great at the subject matter, and they're great at knowing our audience. The challenge is they can't keep up with the latest innovations from Facebook. They don't really know about the API that you need to use in order to get a Twitter stream in a box on your homepage and get the development prioritized to make that happen. That's stuff they can't do. So having somebody who's thinking about those issues and also is connecting it back to the sales team so that they understand what the rules are, or that there are rules about audience interaction, because the scary thing is if it's completely disconnected, you get in a situation which we actually got in where you had somebody in our sales team sold a Twitter campaign without ever, not a single person in the company had a conversation about what would happen if we did that. And basically an editor got an email saying, post this on Twitter, which is like, all right, this is why you need somebody who's a social media person in the middle to start plugging all of these parts of the business together, because it's great that this has evolved and that your editors are attached to your audience, but how does it fit in the bigger picture? So that's even though we're all posting on Twitter and Facebook, the rest of the company didn't necessarily know what we were doing, and we don't know what other things we could add technically, if nothing else, to do a better job.
That's a great point, and I want to follow up on that just a little bit to ask the rest of you to comment a little about how you delegate responsibility for social media within your magazine. Do you have, just your social media experts? Are they the only ones tweeting, or how do you control and manage the social media delegation within your magazine?
Well, Black Enterprise is a smaller company. So if we relied on just two people, which I would say are the core experts at the brand for social media, and with that respect anyway, to funnel the message or share the message of what the brand is doing across our events and television shows and the magazine and the website, we would be pretty limited in terms of our reach. And so what we found is that it has been a process of sharing best practices and encouraging our team. It started off with our editorial teams to begin implementing social media best practices in their daily approach online, not just sharing information about their lives, but obviously sharing information about the editorial that's on the website and in the print magazine and on the shows. And then, of course, being comfortable doing that and sort of cross-promoting the content that's being marketed across our core platforms. So, and since then, it's built out into our television production team and our sales team, as I mentioned earlier. So were we limited to just two folks, the strategist and the person who directs digital marketing strategy, to be the core folk, we would probably not have a whole lot of reach across Twitter and Facebook. And so they've been an integral part of how we message effectively through social media.
Right.
The entire team, that is.
Okay, Michelle?
It sounds pretty similar to what we have at Eating Well. So we have some editor experts who are sort of engaging with users in various different social media platforms. And they really are our content experts, and I work with them to come up with a strategy and what we're going to do and what we're going to develop. And then I work with our marketing and business and production teams to work on the technical side of that. So that doesn't really lie with our editors. And then we also work to bring the intelligence and the learnings and the new developments back to our larger team and act as liaisons to let everybody else know what's developing and going on.
Great.
For us, it's the twofold. So the content team is really responsible for the day-to-day communications, the interactions with the audience, what content is going up, and then my goal is to take the learnings that we're seeing from social and what we're doing and communicate upwards how those are mapping to larger business objectives, how the social media strategy is funneling some of our larger goals. It's hard to tell your C-levels that your post got 2,000 likes because they're like, what does that mean? So we have help as well. We have our agency partners who help us with monitoring, who help us with some of those presentations that need to be happening. And we also just implemented a new social CRM tool, which is going to help us operationalize through different departments so that everybody should have some of the keys to the kingdom, but maybe not the final published key. So adding in those approval path layers was really important for us to get sign-off to let other people start to be able to put content out on our brand pages.
Great. I want to shift the conversation a little to ask you about the career trajectory for someone who's just joined your magazine, who maybe wants to get into doing social media. What would it look like for them if they're just starting out as an intern, posting tweets for you or drafting those for you? What would that look like, 3 years out or 5 years out to move up in your magazine? Jason, do you want to start as well?
Well, we did have an intern posting to Facebook. That was, and she left, and somebody said, "Hey, wait a second, what happened to Facebook?" It's which is dangerous. It's great when somebody steps up and has knowledge of whether it's Twitter or Facebook and has a legitimate enthusiasm about it, that you want to find those people because they're going to understand the medium, I think, better. You can get, and we do get people to post on a regular basis, but you can tell the voice is clearer, and you do speak to a point made at the beginning of today. You speak with a different voice, not just on social media versus your website or your magazine, but I think you speak with a different voice on Facebook than you do on Twitter. So having somebody who gets what those media are and how they work is really important. I do feel like editorially, anyway, everybody needs to become a social media expert, that just editors in the 21st century cannot not understand this. You have to have an understanding and a use of social media. So I think editorially, I don't know whether it will become a specialty in the long run or just something that everybody has to have as part of their toolkit. Organizationally, is it a social media expert in 4 or 5 years, or is it just sort of broader audience development and different interactions? Things are only going to get more complicated, right, in the next 5 years. I'm sorry to say, but I'm assuming. But it's still going to be vitally important because somebody has to sit in the middle of your business and attach your editorial people to your business people, to your marketing people, and understand what the audience is doing.
So did you end up hiring your intern who was doing the Facebook, or did they end up getting a permanent position?
She got a job somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So and then we were left without Facebook again. So and so we basically have now taken that back, and everybody's posting on the Facebook page. But what we've learned already is that routing our Twitter feed to Facebook, the interaction is poor. You really need it to be somebody who speaks Facebook. So that's we're waiting for somebody else to step up and say, yes, I understand Facebook, and that will be an important trait to have.
All right. So I guess the lesson at Macworld is you don't want to be that Facebook intern.
Well, we hired a bunch of interns, but she ended up going somewhere else. But yeah. It was great when she was there, boy.
All right, and how about for you?
We did not let our intern post anything, but we gave them some intern responsibilities that we felt were appropriate. We had them listening and monitoring and helping synthesize the learnings back to our editorial marketing team. So if we posted what is your favorite travels, or what travel story do you want to hear from us, and there's 700 comments. Our intern read through the 700 comments and told us essentially here were the top 5 travel stories people want. The career trajectory in an editorial sense, I think for us, you're getting so much feedback and so much learning about the content that you're putting out. That could be a senior editorial role, that could be a product development role. You're really hearing what people are saying about what they want. For the other side, the social media manager role, that could evolve into a senior, a traditional senior marketing role. It could be something completely new. It's a new channel. It could be a VP of consumer engagement. I don't think we know yet, but I think to Jason's point, it's going to be broader. I don't think it's going to be siloed as the social media expert for the company.
Right. So it sounds like the social media skills might not necessarily be all that you need in order to move up the ladder.
I think so. I think if you think about it as if you just have social media skills, you do need to understand how that connects to larger pieces of the business, whether it's editorial strategy or whether it's marketing strategy or CRM strategy or operational strategy. If you don't have that wider lens, you're talking to yourself, first of all. How are you communicating that upwards? And then you're playing on Facebook and Twitter all day. That's not enough. It's a nice job right now, but eventually people are going to be like, what's the ROI on that?
Well, I think your audience will understand very quickly if you don't really understand the subject of whatever your brand is about. So you can't just be a social media expert. You have to be, at the very least, an expert in the content that you're putting out there, or they'll be able to tell very quickly.
Or the marketing to that point. I hesitate to say how a position would build out for the organization because I'm not the COO, but I know to my own experience that I started off as a strategist at an agency, went on to be an audience development manager at a print publication, but working on their digital side. And when I came to Black Enterprise, I started off as a digital marketing director, But I was working a lot on the offline goals as well. So the event strategy and building registration, it did require a really dynamic and effective social media strategy, but at the same point, I was working on a lot of offline marketing initiatives. So having a core understanding of the marketing objectives as it relates also to the revenue objectives was pretty critical. And I think that if you're going to take on a position in social media, you have to very much understand what underscores the bottom line for revenue growth and audience generation in the company. And that's not just limited to social media. So having a fulsome approach when it comes to strategizing your trajectory should really focus on what's the bottom line of the organization and how do I reinforce that with the skill sets I already have, and how can I grow my skill sets based on what those goals are.
Great.
Yeah.
And Michelle, do you want to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say, even when I'm looking at interns that are applying, I do want to see some social media aptitude and willingness, and that's sort of a baseline for me at this point. But I think that, to Jason's point, it is a part of becoming a part of everybody's job. And so whether it's a specialist in the future or whether it's an integrative approach, I do think that also being a content expert and having those skills is becoming crucial in our organization right now, because we can't put somebody up there on Facebook answering cooking questions if they don't have the background to be able to do that. And that's a weak point. It's not an effective use of our resources. So marrying those two together is pretty crucial for us with a small team.
Okay. I want to follow up on a point that you just made and what Jason made earlier about the role of social media as you're making new hires for your magazine. Do you think, and I know you said you aren't the CEO, but would you be hiring people to join your magazine who don't have some basic understanding of social media at this point?
I would say no. We just came from a really dynamic social media workshop last week, and one of the takeaways, and that was actually myself and a number of members from the digital edit team and a number of members from the editorial team and television team. So everyone was sort of there learning and figuring out, new opportunities. But one of the things we learned was, putting Twitter handles on the masthead is probably going to be a pretty normal approach in terms of how people connect who the story builders are at your company, and getting an understanding of who they are outside of just the print publication. And I imagine that folks coming on who want to be a part of the editorial team on the print side are going to have a real presence on Twitter. We're going to look to see how well they communicate and how effective they are in the space with being interactive with the audience and being able to story and fact find. I also think that on our digital side, we have probably more of a pressure to be even more interactive, and that taking a look at someone's resume is really no longer going to be the only approach. It's going to be looking at how they relate to audiences and how they communicate their skill sets effectively across LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and I'm sure a few more top-notch social media platforms, Foursquare I'd imagine as well. So there are definitely, I think, new challenges and standards for how we evaluate someone's effectiveness as a professional in this space.
Mm-hmm. Michelle, would you agree?
Yes, I would agree. I would also say no. I would think that based on how integrated we are at this point, and how the magazine is not just a print publication, it's a publication that extends across so many platforms, that having a background in digital and social media is pretty essential at this point to be able to perform the functions of the job as it's evolved to be.
Okay. And Lauren, how about for your company?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it would be the role that they're in if we're looking to fill a super senior position, and we're not asking them to be the person who's connecting social, but there is somebody supporting them that's doing it. I don't think that they'd be precluded from the job. We're not asking our editor-in-chief, please launch your Twitter account. We might, but she's still a great editor-in-chief without it, as long as she has the right support underneath her that's able to bring those insights. So yes, for like an entry level, I think you need to have an understanding of digital and social media, because that's where it's going to move to in the next 10, 15 years. For some of those senior level positions, I don't know. I'm not hiring them, so I can't say that it would need to be.
That's interesting. Jason, how about for...
I think it's a huge red flag. I mean, we've seen, there are other red flags, especially for somebody for a junior position you're hiring, and you look at the resume and say, well, you said you majored in communication or journalism in college, but I don't see any examples of you getting things published in the college newspaper or a local newspaper or or a campus magazine or something like that. That's always a red flag. Like, did they really ever do anything with it or just take a bunch of classes? They have less of an excuse now because they could also just start a blog. And likewise, there's not really an excuse if they're not on Twitter and Facebook, or it's a red flag that they're not really embracing this technology. Which it's easier for me as a guy who writes and edits a technology magazine to have that, but I think it's a red flag for everybody in publishing because that's audience interaction. And if you're somebody coming into the job world in 2011 and wants to work at a magazine or a website and you don't have that grasp of these tools, that's a pretty, for me, that would be a red flag. It's not necessarily for every job, but I would be scared by that.
Okay. I want to follow up because I think both of you kind of alluded to, maybe at the highest senior levels, it's not as important as the junior levels, which I think is kind of interesting in light of some recent news about Time Magazine bringing in, the former head of a digital ad agency to now run the company. So they obviously saw that as really important at the highest level. So I'd be curious what you guys thought about that.
I've actually, and I again always speak to the fact that it's definitely more of an intimate group of folks. It's not a larger than 200 people at our company, but I found that between our CEO and our COO, I've had private training sessions with both of them on having a clearer understanding of the social space and getting a better understanding of how they can be more of a valuable role for the company in terms of interacting on it. So just recently I was showing Seismic to our COO, and our CEO has a Twitter account, and he's learning a little bit more about how to leverage it for his use for the company and representing it. I think that they find it as a top priority based on the trend of communication for publishing brands, and I think they realize that it's important to understand how to approach it effectively, even if their role isn't going to be as active as, say, our editors or our TV production teams, for example.
Okay.
I'd say that for me to have people in leadership roles at the organization who embrace it and understand its value and understand where digital and social is going just means that that's part of the initial conversation. And so there's not an education issue there or an integration issue. It's just naturally part of where we're starting from. So to me, that's a huge benefit, and I feel fortunate that we have that. And on the content side, which I'm a part of, our editor-in-chief was actually the one who, up until very recently, was doing almost all of our tweeting. And so having her mind in that space and her be part of that, because that was a passion of hers, just brought that naturally into the conversation. So to me, it was a big asset. And I even think that whether we're talking about a creative director or whatever kind of senior role, I do think having that aptitude and understanding and thinking about things in a forward-thinking way is really, truly a big benefit for the whole organization.
Great. Did either of you want to add something? Or?
Yes, because I made it sound like our leadership doesn't know anything about social, and that's not true. Our CEO has his own Twitter account and his own blog, and he's probably one of the most active in our organizations, and he embraces it. And he embraces it from the standpoint as a CEO of Weight Watchers, but also because he is passionate about sharing his own particular story. He's a lifetime member of Weight Watchers. He goes to meetings. He's a brand advocate, and so in that sense, he is the perfect person to be embracing digital and to be spreading that awareness from a very authentic place. I don't know that every single person in our organization needs to have their own Twitter account or needs to be fully embracing social media the way essentially I am, because if it's not authentic and it's not directly tied to their job function, which yes, social touches everything, but there are people that can be immersed in it, and there are people that can just have an understanding of digital strategy and an understanding of audience engagement strategy without necessarily being that connected to the platforms all the time. I think that's where I was kind of going with. I don't know that it's a prerequisite for every job hire. For entry level, especially in content and our marketing team, yes, absolutely. for something else. Somebody might have qualifications and they don't have a Twitter account, and I don't want to give the impression that we wouldn't hire them for that, because I just don't see that being the case at this point.
Excellent.
Just one really quickly. We heard earlier today, people don't interact with brands so much socially. They interact with people. It's a social interaction, and that's the importance of having your people be on Twitter and Facebook. Facebook a little bit less so, because Facebook has this strange kind of conflation of individuals and brands. Once you manage a page, you post as the page and not a person, and you can't be the person anymore, which is weird, and presumably they will address that at some point. But on Twitter, there's actual value in being able to name drop and say, our writer or editor so-and-so writes about this, because they have followers, they will pick up followers, they will tweet about what they're doing with the brand, and I really believe that builds a much stronger social network, and for that to work, you've got to have your people, at least your people who are on the front lines, who are public-facing, they've got to be out there, because on Twitter, I think it's essential, because the brand accounts are a little bit weird, and they can be good, and they can have a voice, sometimes they don't, but it is about people.
Great. I want to ask you, too, and I think this builds on the point about having your own personal Twitter identity, about job security as a social media strategist. Do you feel like your personal brand is becoming entwined within your company? Do you feel like that gives you some job security as part of the role that you play within your company? So I'd love to know a little about what you think of that.
So whether or not your
Are you a
presence
linchpin?
on,
Yes.
Okay. Executive leaders at a summit that we have annually called the Women of Power Summit. It's every February. 700 women come. Most of them are not are at C-suite level, and a lot of them are not a social media adept. And so the workshop was conducted to basically equip them with the skills they need. Unknowingly, there was a booker from MSNBC in the audience when I was conducting the workshop, who then thought it would be great for me to participate on MSNBC as a digital expert, if you will, or a social media expert. Certainly not something that I intended. I'm sure if I had known she was in the audience, I wouldn't have performed so well. I would have been a little nervous. But I certainly took the opportunity on, because I thought, well, this is a great way, one, to represent the brand. It's a great way, one, to represent my knowledge in the space. And it turns out that it's a great way to promote it from a PR standpoint, how knowledgeable Black enterprise is when it comes to social media trends and analysis on current trending issues on the largest news network available. So now I would say it most definitely should be something that you have on your radar as an opportunity to be strategic and to build your brand and to secure your value at an organization. And I certainly now can speak to the fact that it could certainly occur. And so I think definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Would either you guys have something to add? Or are social media strategists the linchpins? Are they a dime a dozen? What kind of job security do they have?
Well, I think that for me, it's a mix of social media and digital expertise. But I sit in a unique spot in our company where, because of the metrics and because of the engagement, I feel like I get a different understanding because of those connections to what our users want and what they respond to, and that's a pretty unique spot. So from that perspective, yes, I think it's important.
Okay.
I'm banking on job security. No, essentially, yes, right now there's a lot of eyes at all levels focused on our team and the organization, and we're able to show value to different departments. So I'm hoping that we can continue to grow how valuable we are to the organization.
Why does it have to be or, by the way? Nerds or your next boss. Why not both?
You're nerdy.
Well, I'm going to
next
ask
boss.
you guys in 10 seconds or less to give your final concluding thoughts. Are they just the nerds of the day, or are they your next boss? Jason, 10 seconds or less.
Yeah, I think if everybody's got to know this, so your next boss, by process of elimination, will be knowledgeable in social media, because they'll have to be. That's how they'll get to be your next boss.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Next boss.
Linchpin.
How about you?
Ditto.
All right.
I'd say next boss if they're strategic nerds. So if they understand what underscores the objectives of departments that really build the revenue in the company and really are influential, absolutely they're your next boss.
All right, that was 15 seconds, but that was good. All right, I think that's about time for us. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.